What happens when a fearless firefighter trades her gear for a sewing machine and sparks a global quilting movement? Brandy Maslowski faced blazing fires and hidden battles, but her greatest transformation began when she swapped a firefighter's helmet for quilting needles. In this episode of Podcasting Secrets, you'll discover how Brandy turned trauma into triumph, carving out a global community around quilting. From battling burnout to building a world-class podcast, Brandy shares the lessons behind pursuing passion, finding healing, and mastering the art of reinvention, one stitch at a time.
Welcome to the Podcasting Secrets Show, where successful creators share their best stories, secrets, and strategies. I'm your host, Nathan Gwilliam.
Hello, incurable creators, and welcome to this episode of the Podcasting Secrets Show. On today's episode, we're going to talk with Brandy Maslowski. She's the host of the Quilter on Fire podcast. She's a teacher, an author, and a coach. What happens when a firefighter trades in her gear for a sewing machine and ends up igniting a global quilting community through podcasting? Brandy has transformed her passion for quilting into a platform that inspires, educates, and connects creators worldwide. And today we uncover how she turned a niche art form into a storytelling powerhouse. Thank you so much for being with us today, Brandy.
Hi, Nathan. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you start off by sharing with us something that most people don't know about you?
Well, first, I would say most people, when they see me, they don't know that I'm a firefighter. So that's, it's kind of hard to tell when you're female that you're a firefighter. But, what would my audience not know about me? I think that I'm a regular person in my basement trying to edit my podcast every week. I think they think I'm this, famous person. It's stretched to say that, but, they see me and they have the joy of listening to those podcast episodes, but they don't really realize that I'm just a regular person like anyone else, and I'm just doing what I love.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Brandy, can you start off by sharing a little bit about yourself and your family and where you're from?
Absolutely. I live in Summerland, BC, Canada. It's the most beautiful place on earth. I think everyone, loves the special things about where they live. But I live with my husband and my son and my pup, Luna. She's a chocolate lab. And my mom lives with us as well. So we have a wonderful family here. And I have been doing my podcast for 5 years now. I'm about to hit a milestone, 5 years. So that is the main thing that I do the best, I think, in my business. I'm a teacher, speaker, and judge in the quilting industry. I travel the world teaching, doing tours for quilters. I do cruises with quilters. I have a whole lot of fun. So I've really taken my niche and, just gone full speed ahead.
Okay. Can you tell us about that journey that you went through to become a podcaster?
Oh, yeah. So I was a firefighter for 15 years in central Canada. And all the way along, I used quilting as a craft that calmed my mind and kind of eased the pain of the difficult things I saw and witnessed. And sometimes it was a struggle just being a female in that environment as well. So some of that toxic workplace thing happened once in a while. But I mean, overall, firefighters are amazing. And I really loved that career and the journey. But at the end of that career, my spirit was kind of crushed, right? And I just needed to figure something else out for my life. And I had some big realizations. And that's where our family gathered ourselves up and we moved across Canada to where we would love to retire one day. And we started fresh. And with this new outlook, I really wanted to focus on my craft or my hobby and make my side gig my real gig. So that's kind of the story leading into why I became the Quilter on Fire, the firefighter who became the quilter. Really the inspiration for my name came from Entrepreneurs on Fire, which was my favorite podcast at the time.
I love JLD. He's great.
I love him. And I have to tell you, I actually got to speak to him once, not in person, but online. I actually got to speak to him and he answered me. And I said, I just have to tell you, you inspired my name. And he's like, you go, girl. Like, that is awesome. So I kind of felt like, is it okay I use that name? But he was all for it. So yeah, it was really kind of cool to chat with him for a second in a forum somewhere. But yeah, so I became the Quilter on Fire, and really I created this podcast to surround myself with a community of people who would lift me up. It feels like it's kind of selfish to me, but I really think I'm giving back, and I think the feedback has been wonderful and it's been growing. So I really have been having a lot of fun.
So I'll tell you a fun story about John Lee Dumas.
Yeah.
So I was invited to be a guest on his show once, and this is like the coolest thing ever for
Yeah.
me. I love him,
No
and
kidding.
biggest show that I've ever been invited to be on, and I get on, and my internet stops
Oh
working.
no.
And so I'm running downstairs and I'm restarting my router and I'm doing everything. I think it turned off at least twice, maybe three times. I was so thoroughly embarrassed by the
Oh,
show,
that's a
but
podcaster's nightmare.
yeah, but he was so cool about it. He was very kind about it.
I bet.
I really enjoyed that episode.
Yeah, I love everything that he's brought to the table. He just brings value, value, value.
Yeah, he certainly does. Okay, can you tell me some of the biggest challenges that you have faced on this journey that you've been through?
Yeah, I think, when you're talking about podcasting, some of the big challenges are getting the great guests and being consistent and all that kind of stuff. But I think, I think the biggest challenge for me was monetizing so that I was actually making a living. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
podcasters have the same issue. Like, how am I going to fund this hobby of mine? How am I going to make this a real deal? Right. And so I did a few things that really worked for me. So, of course, sustainable income was the challenge. Also, another thing was transition to video, and I'm still working on that one because I do everything audio and I'm kind of old school that way. But let's stick to the sustainable income one. So, the first thing I added was advertisement invites. I was struggling, like, oh, I can't get anyone to advertise. I can't figure this out. And, one time a friend asked me, and she's like, well, are you actually inviting people? And I was like, maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't have the confidence. Maybe I should just put it out there. I started actually inviting people, like 10 people per week, and, until I got one advertiser a week. And then once I started to get advertisers, I actually got advertisers telling me, you're not charging enough. I'll buy 10. I was like, what? So it was really good. They sort of saw the value. They saw the numbers coming in. And at that point, I made a bundle of ads and I turned it into a media kit so they could buy multiples. If they buy 12, they get one free, and that type of thing. And then eventually I had businesses coming to me in the quilting industry saying, hey, like, we're a fabric company and we want you to interview our fabric designers. So instead of charging them, $300 for one ad for a full podcast, I would say, okay, you're going to pay a little more because I'm interviewing your people and featuring them. And we ended up having a paid sponsorship opportunity. And those kind of solutions really worked for me when it was a struggle to bring in the money and make a living.
Yeah. So what you're talking about are maybe sponsored episodes where
Yeah.
they sent the leaders of their organization or maybe some influencers that use their products on to be guests of your show. Is that
Yeah.
right?
And I had one rule with that because, I have 4 podcasts a month all year long. And I didn't want all of a sudden to be doing 10 of someone else's designers, right? I wanted it to still be my show. So it had to be a guest that I would have loved to interview anyways. So that was my one rule. So I would always say to them, I'm only going to do one a month. So I still have 3 episodes of my own. And it has to be someone I would otherwise love to interview. And luckily, these big fabric companies have hundreds of designers, right? So I can choose, oh, I love this person and that person. And it really worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah. John Lee Dumas does this as well. This is one of his primary revenue streams, is his sponsored episodes.
Yeah.
So much so I was looking at his website this week and he has a bar. The very first thing at the top of his page invites people to be a guest on his show. And it's his funnel that he brings people in and invites them to pay to be a guest on his show, which isn't a bad thing. It is one of the most effective strategies to make money from a podcast, especially early on when, I don't know, I guess it works early on and it works late in the game as well, because John Lee Dumas is still doing it very effectively.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess
such a great idea.
the amount of money you can charge goes up and up.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons it works so well is I saw a stat that I think it's 96% of people don't trust ads.
Yeah.
And so when people run ads on your podcast, they're just not credible. An ad for a business telling people how awesome you are, just people don't believe it. But when you interview someone on your show and they're a guest,
Yeah.
it feels so much more credible than running an ad. Do
Yeah,
you
that's
agree with that?
so true. And I can tell you one instance where I ran a series of ads because someone was just paying me money to run the ads. And I really wasn't at the point where I was thinking, is this 100% on brand? And it wasn't. It was a weight loss thing. And that was the only time that I ever got feedback from my listeners saying, why are you running these ads? That doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to listen to that. Right. And I was like, oh, okay, I've got to change my perspective here and really think, does this work? Like, if someone wants to do an ad for a book that would build your history, would that work with my listeners? Maybe. And maybe you can even try it and see what they think. But yeah, the weight loss wasn't working for my listeners at all.
Okay, so what specific strategies can you teach us to help us be more effective at selling those sponsored episodes and delivering them effectively?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really lucky because I'm going to the big shows. So I'm meeting the people in person. So many people are online nowadays and so many events and everything is online. But if you can be in person at an event and shake the hands and look people in the eyes, that is where you're going to get those connections. That's where I got my biggest sponsor of all time. It was a handshake. You're not charging enough and I'm going to buy the rest of your year. I was like, what? Like, this is the stuff that really works when you're connecting with people in person. So I actually am dreaming one day of going to some big podcast event. I've never gone to one yet. Everything I do is in the quilting world. So I might just have to do a podcast event one day because I truly believe in the face-to-face.
Yeah. The best one is Podcast Movement.
Yeah.
If you go to one.
I've heard about it. I would love to go one day.
Yeah.
One day it'll
It is
happen.
great. Okay. What are some of the other challenges that you faced and how did you get through them?
Well, video is another big challenge that I'm facing right now. So I have a virtual assistant and he's young and sprite and very good at what he's doing, but he's always saying, Brand, like, you've got to get onto YouTube with your podcast. Like, why are you just audio? And at the beginning, like 5 years ago, I thought, I don't want to split my audience between video and audio. I want to have all the numbers in one spot. And now I'm realizing that doesn't make any sense because if I am splitting them, it's okay. I can just add those two numbers together and say to an advertiser, I still have 5,000 downloads a week or whatever, right? But it's a challenge for me now because I have an incredible producer who I love and he only does audio. And so to switch over to video, I might either have to hire someone new or hire multiple people. I don't know. So you might be able to give me tips on how to do that, but that's something I'm working on. I might even consider doing something like, Patreon, putting the raw video on Patreon for just people who want to pay so they get to see the real deal. And then I don't have to edit at all. And then maybe just do the finely tuned audio as I usually do for free.
Yeah. I would think that in the quilting space, it might lend itself really well to video because you can show them what you're doing and show the materials and show the finished products that you really can't do on audio.
Yeah,
Thoughts on that?
it's interesting because a few people have said that to me, but I think the way I started this in the beginning was it's meant for quilters to listen to so they don't have to watch anything because they're quilting and they're sitting at their machine doing something and to just listen while they're quilting or driving or walking or whatever. But you could be totally right. I haven't actually tested that theory as to whether they really want to see the visuals of my guest and what they might be holding up. So that could be a good direction. I don't know.
Well, if you want, I can talk with you offline. What a lot of people are doing today is they're starting with the video and they record the episode in video format and then they edit it in video format and then they pull the audio and the video out. So to get audio and video takes almost no more effort than it does to just do the audio.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. The only thing is I don't want to let go of my amazing audio editor who doesn't do video. I love him so much, but I'll figure it out eventually. I will.
So what if you found a platform that he could use where he could learn to do the video as well?
It's possible. I don't know if he'd be willing. I mean, he does multiple podcasts, so I don't know. I'd have to I actually have broached the subject with him a few times and he's like, I don't do that, but it's okay. It's okay. I'll figure it out eventually.
Do you have a favorite episode that you've had over the years?
Favorite episode? Gosh, that's like choosing your favorite child or something, but there's so many wonderful episodes that I've had. I think one that really surprised and delighted me was this guest called Wendy Zavara. And it was years ago, like almost 3 years ago, I think. And I just noticed her on Instagram. She was basically a military mom. They moved a lot, both husband and wife in the military, had a few kids. She was scrambling on Instagram at the last minute to make a coat of many colors for her daughter. So this is a quilted coat. Her daughter loved Dolly Parton, watched the movies over and over again. She wanted to make this coat for her 3-year-old for Christmas. And I was just looking at this little story she posted. I was like, oh my gosh, you have got to be on my podcast. And that is one of my most heartwarming episodes of all time, because you don't always have to feature the biggest, greatest influencers and leaders in your industry. You can focus on people as well who consider themselves regular people who say, I'm not worthy to be on a podcast, but then it turns out to be the best story ever.
That's right. But they have a great story. That's what it's about.
Yes.
Our most important job as podcasters is to find the great stories and figure out how to tell them out there to the world.
Absolutely.
Share them with the world. So Brandy, are there any game changers that you found have helped really drive the growth of your show?
Yeah, I think my quality improved drastically when I brought in a podcast producer. So I hired someone to do every episode. He's consistent. He's good at his job. He takes these things off my plate that take me hours and hours and hours. He probably does them a lot quicker than me, but he does a fantastic job. When you hire a professional, you take away the okay quality that people are just living with, and you bump it up to much better quality. And that translates into listenership. So it just saved me hours of time in the progress and boosted my quality. The other thing I hired about 6 months ago is a full-time staff. And I know this sounds, maybe unachievable or beyond some podcasters' reach, but I saved for a whole year, like $30,000, so I could hire a virtual assistant full-time. I got 40 hours a week of this fella, and he has made my world so easy. It's hard at first to do the onboarding because you think, I'm going to have all this free time. Well, the first 4 months were just 100% working with this guy to make sure he understands the business. But once we got into the groove and we got a 90-day plan for social media, and we got him doing my emails the way I wanted him to do them, and he drafts things for me, and I just have to go and edit and post and schedule things. It's awesome. So he takes away all those tasks and lets me focus on the creative aspect of everything. I can find advertisers, I can find guests, I can do another project that I wasn't even thinking and I'd have time for. So it really has changed my whole outlook on everything. And I can also focus on finding other ways to bring in income.
Yeah. Where's that VA located?
So he's in the Philippines, and I'm telling you, like, if you want to chat with me about it, you can hit me up on the DMs, no problem, because I will hop on a Zoom with you and tell you all about it. It's called Outsourced Doers, and Grace is amazing. And she has this sort of program where I can do a referral, so it benefits me as well. And you could get involved in that too if you have a virtual assistant and you refer other people. So it's a whole program, but I've really been enjoying it for the last 6 months, and it's made a huge difference in my business.
Love it. Today's episode of Podcasting Secrets is brought to you by Pod Allies, the done-for-you podcasting services solution. When I speak with CEOs about their podcast, one of the most common comments that I hear is that they know they need a podcast, but they don't have time. Have you ever wondered how some businesses find a way to still run their podcasts while juggling their crazy day-to-day operations? The secret might be simpler than you think. Let me introduce you to Pod Allies. This is a service that's changed the game for businesses in the podcasting world. Pod Allies is a done-for-you podcast production and marketing service. They understand that while many businesses understand the immense value podcasting can have for their business, finding time to produce, syndicate, promote, and monetize a show can be challenging. Pod Allies offers a dedicated team to handle virtually all aspects of your podcast production. From strategy and branding to audio and video editing and guest scheduling, they've got you covered. They even take care of creating blog posts, transcripts, and syndicating your content across multiple platforms. What sets Pod Allies apart is their use of PodUp, their proprietary podcasting software suite. This allows them to streamline the entire podcasting process, saving you time, effort, and a bunch of money. If you're ready to become a thought leader, connect with your audience, and grow your business through podcasting without all of the investment of time and cost of doing it yourself, Pod Allies might be the perfect solution for you. To learn more or to schedule a free consultation with a podcast expert, visit podallies.com. That's PODALLIES.com. Now back to the show. Okay, Brandy, any other tips for us on how to grow the followers on your show?
I think collaboration is a really, really good idea. So I do a lot of podcast swaps. So there's about 24 or even more great quilting podcasts out there. And instead of feeling like, oh, they're my competition, I like hit them hard and say, let's do this together. Like, let's raise each other up. Let's share. There's room for everyone. And so we do a lot of podcast exchanges. And then also I've been on some really cool podcasts like Beneath the Helmet and some like that's in the fire industry. So it's totally different, right? It's like my mental health story. So being on other podcasts as a guest, first of all, it gives you a good lesson in how to treat your own guests because you have to prepare on the other side of the story. And you realize what goes into it and how hard it is to be a guest. And it really helps when you're both advertising the podcast at the same time. You're reaching double the audience, right? So that's been really effective for me too.
Okay. So I agree with you. When I ask successful podcasters what are the best strategies to grow the shows, almost all of them say be a guest on other shows,
Yeah.
related shows. Can you share with me any tips or strategies you have about how to be a great guest on other shows?
Yes, I love to prepare my guests well. So I do a little 30-minute pre-interview thing with them because my podcast is long form content, like 90 minutes every episode. So that is really long it's longer than the average podcast, I would say. So what I would
It's almost long enough to make a quilt.
I know it's like almost as long as a movie. Yeah. So yeah, it's really long. But I just love to just let them go and share their stories and really explore deeply. And that's the feedback I get the most. Like I was able to do 2 hikes with one podcast, like people really give me good feedback about that. But back to the tips, I sort of have 5 tips that I really love to give my guests or just share on podcasts. The first one is know your best bits. I mean, it's your time to shine. So it's not the time to be humble. You need to be proud and share your milestones when you're a guest on the podcast, because that's what they brought you there for, to share your story. So number 2 would be to speak and have a conversation. Don't read from a page. Don't write out all your notes. Don't turn the pages during the podcast. You can have a little card on the side or something with some, little tips, but reading sounds stiff on a podcast and conversations win hearts. So that would be number 2. Number 3 would be mind your sound. I mean, you know this, Nathan. You have to have good sound. I've actually had an episode where I had this superstar quilter on my podcast, and I was so excited. And her people had it all set up, and I was working with her people right till the last second. And I think it was her niece or someone in her group at the last second popped her face in and said, "Oh, by the way, she's not wearing her headset. She's not going to do it." I was like, no. So she had sound directly into her computer, which is kind of grainy. I ended up relieving myself of all my good sounds so that at least I'd sound the same as her and we'd be consistent. But that was kind of like, just make sure you got good sound. If you can have, a headset with a mic, even if it's earbuds and has a mic on the little string, that's good. But you want to have really good sound. I've got a couple more. So the 4th one is stay snack free. I can't tell you how many guests I've had who are eating while I'm doing the podcast with them. And I have to be like, are you eating something? I'm like, oh, I'm just having some nuts. Like it's hilarious. Or they're flicking their pen or they're, moving things around because they're nervous. It's so, yeah, you want to stay sound free, snack free, no slurping on your drink while you're podcasting. You can take a break anytime to have a snack and drink, but that's some of the funnier incidents I've had. The last thing I'd say is prep some really good shareable nuggets, right? You are the expert. That's why they're having you on the show. So bring takeaways that the audience can really, take in and use, and don't forget to share them. Like sometimes you've gone through a whole podcast and you're like, oh, I brought my best nuggets and I completely forgot to share them. If you're nearing the end of the podcast, you can say, oh, you know what? There was just one more thing I really wanted to share. And then you can drop a few good nuggets at the end. So it's important to spotlight yourself, give yourself a little promotion, share the best nuggets that you have. And yeah, so those are my top tips for being a podcast guest.
And you've been a great guest on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Oh,
One of the things that I really liked that you did is you didn't just prepare the nuggets, but before we started the show, you told me what the nuggets were
yeah.
so that I knew the right questions to ask you to bring those nuggets out. Like we could dig them out together.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. Have you made any really embarrassing mistakes on your podcast?
Oh yeah. So
Any?
I have done over 230 episodes, and only once, one single time, I did not record.
Yeah, that's awful.
It
I've
was
done that too.
kidding. But I have to tell you, she would probably win in my books for the best guest of all time, because I think I thought I was going to faint or barf. I don't know what was happening when I realized I hadn't recorded. Maybe it was my first hot flash. I have no idea, but I was just dying inside. And I immediately phoned her and I said, Kestrel, I am so sorry. And she's like, what? I said, I don't know what I did, but I did not record. Like, this has never happened before. And she goes, do you mean that we get to have that wonderful conversation all over
Oh,
again?
that's so
I
kind.
know. We talked for 90 minutes and I didn't record. And she was so gracious. Every time I see her, I bowl her over with a hug, because I just can't even ever believe she did that. And I will never make that mistake again. Like, not ever, ever, ever. I will never do that. I'm constantly, even like during a podcast, checking back. Is it recording? Like, it's just it was embarrassing, but she was so gracious.
I want to be that kind of a guest.
Yeah.
That's great inspiration.
Yeah.
So, Brandy, can you share with us any secrets or strategies related to audience engagement?
Yeah, this is where, you don't want to be humble when you're in a podcast, right? This is where I really shine. Community-centered content creation is my thing. And I go as far as going to some of the biggest quilt shows in North America. And I set up a podcast lounge in a booth. And I interview 2-minute snippets with people just passing by. These are quilters at the show, enjoying the show. And I reel them in. Where are you from? What's your favorite quilting? I ask them all a couple questions each. And then I do this compilation episode at some of these big shows. And those are some of my top listened to podcasts, because it's about the real people, the guests, the people walking the show. People get to hear all about the show, because I say to the people, what's your favorite thing about this show? What have you seen so far that was, the best thing? And people who don't get to go to the show, they get to hear what the show's all about. So I ask meaningful questions. I have people who consider themselves a regular quilter. I have experts. I have superstars. I take to heart what my listeners give me for feedback as well. Once I had a guest, or a listener, I guess, who said to me, you don't feature diverse enough range of guests. And I dove back into all my episodes, and I discovered we actually do feature really diverse guests, but we're kind of humble about it, I guess, or we don't really advertise it that way. So it's just part of our culture. So now we'll speak that message a little bit louder when we feature an underrepresented guest. So, I want to learn from my listeners as well. And when I'm coming up with a guest or deciding whether to have a guest, I really try to think, how will this strengthen connections between quilters? Not even me and them, but between them. How will this get, I don't want to find out, how is this going to get more downloads, or is this podcast gold? I want to know, how will this strengthen the connections between my listeners? So those are kind of my secret sauce takeaways that if you're starting out in podcasting, you really want to know your why, and you really want to center on your community.
I love it. How about off-site gatherings of your community? Besides the events that other people put on that you go to that you've talked about, do you do your own workshops or retreats or coaching or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I teach, speak, and judge all over the world, and I do land tours as well with quilters. And I also do quilting cruises. So I teach on cruises. I've
That's
even been
cool.
asked to be an influencer on a cruise. And, I'm in my 50s, and I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, are you sure you got the right person here? An influencer on a cruise? And it was so fun. I just did social media for a whole week with 80 quilters. It was super fun. So I do all kinds of things like this. But when you're thinking about really connecting with your community, I think it's those booths at the shows that really get me connected, because I'm getting dozens and dozens of quilters in my booth, and they're going to be on the show. So I love that part of it the most.
Yeah. In your early days, was there ever a moment where you questioned whether your podcast was going to succeed? How did you feel? Tell us that story, and how did you push through that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like, you don't even know that I started podcasting in 2013. And my first podcast was called Canadian Quilt Talk. And I did 100 episodes that were dismal. Like, I did 100 episodes. I was doing back and forth between me. I was trying to be an expert. I was trying to research. It was so much work to research all these topics. And then
Yeah.
I kind of realized, okay, I don't have any American audience and I want to have an audience around the world. Maybe I got to rebrand and reach a wider audience. And I started to feature the experts instead of trying to be an expert at everything. I featured the experts, so I was learning as well. And so when I rebranded just before the pandemic, so 5 years ago, to Quilter on Fire, that's when I really started to blossom. Now, 75% of my audience is USA.
Yeah, that is a great example when we start our shows that we want to be sure that our titles and our brands don't limit us to
Yeah.
too small of an area, that we give ourselves the ability to grow without having to go through a painful rebrand.
Yeah, even the guests I was asking, these amazing American famous quilters, and they were like, Canadian what? Like, what are you talking about? Well, a lot of them didn't even know what a podcast was at the time, but it really opened up the doors when I changed it to Quilter on Fire. It took away sort of the regional aspect of it, and it just really worked.
So, Brandy, there's a lot of people out there who would love to transition from their current career to a new career as a podcaster or an influencer of some type. Um, you've done that, going from a firefighter to being the successful podcaster. Can you tell us more about that transition for you and any advice you have for others?
Yeah, I think the most important key, was to choose a topic you love so much that you're jumping out of bed in the morning. Like, I could stay up all night by accident quilting, talking about quilting, being in an all night quilting gig with a bunch of people online. I could just, my husband comes down at 2 in the afternoon. Are you eating today? And I haven't even eaten. So choose a topic that just makes you go wild, that it's like the thing. And I'm not talking about you have to find your passion. I'm just try everything. And if you love something, do more of that until you're amazing at it, and then talk about it on a podcast. So that's my advice. The transition from firefighter to quilt podcaster was kind of a long one because we moved across Canada. I got a whole bunch of other different kinds of jobs in a chamber of commerce and emergency management and all these other things. And I was doing the podcasting on the side. But just a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I really kind of retired for good from all the other real jobs. And I'm using quotes for say real jobs. But when I started podcasting in earnest 5 years ago and I went all in on my quilting business, that's where things really started to blossom.
So, Brandy, over the last 5 years, have there been any great milestones that you're particularly proud of?
Yeah, there have been a few. I mean, getting an editor and those kind of things were really big. But the one thing that just happened recently that was a real shocker for me was that I won a Women in Podcasting award. And, you never expect these things, but, they notify you that you're nominated and you have to like prepare a 60-second thing. And you're just like, are you kidding me right now? So it was such an honor because I created this podcast for the connection, to surround myself with quilters who lift me up. And somehow it's grown into this global community and I'm just sharing stories. So, from the average quilter to the superstar, I can't even believe sometimes that people say yes. So having an award and being able to say that out loud, like a couple times I've been doing a lecture at a quilt guild for 100 people. And I'll say, like, I have an award-winning podcast. This is only the third time I've said that, but it's really exciting. It feels really good inside to be recognized that way, especially women in podcasting, because, I've surrounded myself with a group of women who are podcasters who are amazing and they're lifting me up as well. So it was just really an honor to receive that award.
Thank you for sharing and congratulations on that amazing award.
Thank you so
And
much.
very well deserved. Okay, Brandy, if our audience has enjoyed this episode like I have, and they want to learn more about you and your show and your services, maybe they're even interested in quilting, what are the best ways that they can get to know you better and learn about these things?
You can go to my website at quilteronfire.com. Everything that we talked about today is on that website. You can find the podcast there, the things I offer, the retreats, all the fun stuff. And everywhere online, I'm known as Quilter on Fire.
You didn't do QO Fire like John Lee Dumas did
No,
EOFire.com?
no, the whole thing, Quilter on Fire.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, choose a topic you love. Passion sustains motivation through pivots, burnout, and challenges. Number 2, prioritize authentic storytelling. Listeners connect when you share expertise and humanity. Number 3, initiative drives podcast monetization. Pitch sponsors, bundle offers, and use media kits with clear boundaries. Number 4, cross promotion grows your audience fastest. Podcast swaps and guest appearances double your exposure. Number 5, real connection starts in person. Networking at live events can lead to major sponsorships and collaborations. Number 6, invest in professional support. Hiring a producer and virtual assistant frees your time for growth and creativity. Number 7, community engagement keeps listeners invested. Crowdsource stories and intentionally highlight diversity. Number 8, sponsored episodes work best when guests organically fit the show, preserving brand integrity. Number 9, early failures are stepping stones. Rebranding and pivoting provide lessons for success. Number 10, off-mic engagement deepens relationships. Tours, cruises, and local gatherings can foster loyalty. And finally, number 11, be a prepared guest. Speak conversationally, optimize sound quality, and provide shareable insights. If you're looking for a great podcasting platform that integrates more than 60 different tools to help you create, grow, and monetize your podcast, I recommend you get a free trial of PodUp at podup.com. And when you do, you can also receive a free 30-day podcast launch course. And if you want a podcast but you don't have time, I recommend you check out podallies.com and learn about our done-for-you podcast production, marketing, and monetization services. Thanks for joining us for this episode. I wish you success as you turn your passion into profit through podcast monetization.